A very good afternoon to all of you grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's mathematical literacy lesson. My name is Mambani Kekana, and remember that this lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with the Siboney Discovery Center. Now, boys and girls, it is unbelievable. It is that time of the year. It was a it has been actually a very long year for most of you. But I know that you have been working very hard to get where we are today. And then I believe that your educators, my colleagues at school level, have also worked very hard to make sure that you are prepared for this examination. Now, boys and girls, this is one of the most important examination because this is one examination that will determine whether you are ready for the final examination or not. So it's very important that you prepare yourself very well for this examination, because after this it's going to be the final examination. So now, boys and girls, welcome to today. Stay tuned, and I hope that you are going to learn a lot today from the freshers lesson, because today we are just going to refresh your memory in terms of what you must prepare for tomorrow's examination. So stay tuned. Now, boys and girls, I'm sure for now you must have an idea of what you are going to write about. I know that throughout the year, my colleagues, your educators, have actually covered everything that was supposed to be covered, okay? But it is very important for you to know exactly what you're going to write about. So you just have to make sure that you study the correct topics, or you study the correct sections for tomorrow. Now, just to give you an idea of Math Lit Paper 1, especially since this is going to be the biggest question paper that you're going to write. I think since you started schooling, you have never written a Math Lit paper out of 150 marks. Yes, that's a lot of marks. 150 marks, and then in that 150 marks, you only need at least 30% in order to pass. Now, boys and girls, it is achievable, it is possible. 150 marks, you only need 30%, and then 30% of 150 marks, it's 45 marks. Now imagine, only 45 marks out of 150 that you need to pass paper 1. But we all know that 45 marks, it's actually not enough. We actually need far more than that for you to do better in the subject. So what you need to remember is tomorrow's paper is going to be 3 hours. You're going to write a 3-hour paper. And then in this paper, you're going to write about finance. Okay, now I know that most of you find the topic of finance challenging. Of course, there and there'll always be those sections that are challenging, but it is also possible that it is actually possible that there are some sections that you can actually obtain marks from that. Now, finance, it's going to be about 60%. 60% of 150 marks. 60% of 150 marks, it's about 90. So this one will be about 90 marks. 90 marks will come from finance. So finance is going to form a bigger part of this paper. And then of course we've got data handling. So just make sure that you study data handling as well, which is 35%. Now 35% in terms of marks in this case is going to be about either 52 or 53 marks. It's just a Math Lit to boys and girls, where you just say 60% of 150 marks. 60% of 150 marks will give you 90 marks. And then 35% of 150 marks will give you about 52 or 53 marks. And then, of course, we've got 5%. 5% is going to be probability. Now, if you calculate 5%, that will be about 7.5 marks, but we know that we don't have half of a mark, so that will be about 7 marks. Okay, boys and girls, this is just to give an idea. It might not be exactly 90 marks, but it will be around 90 marks. It might be 88, it might be 89, it might be 92. And then for data handling, we say we expect the examiner to give us a question paper with about 53 marks. So it might be about 50 marks, it might be about 48 marks, but it's going to be around there. Probability, we say 7 marks, it might be about 5 marks, 6 marks, 7 marks, or 8 marks. But we expect the examiner to play around those marks when they set the question paper. So very important, just make sure that you go and study all the sections. Unfortunately, in MathsLit, we cannot actually say it's only income tax, or it's only URF, or it's only tariff system that is going to be set under finance. But what we know that finance will consist of 90 marks, data handling 53 marks, and probability about 7 marks, and that is 150 marks. Now, again, boys and girls, you need to strategize as well. You need to strategize whenever you answer a question paper. Remember, you don't have all the time to yourself. You don't have all the time to yourself. You only have 3 hours to answer questions of 150 marks. You've got 3 hours, and remember, these 3 hours, it's for reading, or it's also for reading. It's not only for answering, but it's also for reading. It's very, very important that you read. Even if you have to read more than once, just make sure that you read to understand the concept, or just make sure that you read to understand the scenario before you answer the question. You've got 3 hours, but at the very same time, you need to manage. Okay, you need to manage time. Okay, so in terms of answering, usually I will say for the strategy, it's 1 minute for 1 mark, 1 minute for 1 mark. So if a question, maybe it's about 2 marks, try not to spend longer than 2 minutes on that question. Try not to spend longer than 2 minutes. Even if you spend longer than 2 minutes, but just make it like 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes at maximum. If a question counts about 7 marks or it counts about 6 marks, you need to check your time. So it's very important. You need to check your time, that if it's 6 marks, you do not take longer than 6 minutes on that question. Or even if you take longer than 6 minutes, just make it 7 minutes or 8 minutes. But you cannot have a situation where a question counts 6 marks and then you go and take 20 minutes on that question. So if you take 20 minutes, it simply means you are actually taking time for other questions that are still coming. So if you don't manage your time, you might be surprised that by the end of the 3 hours, you have actually not answered most of the questions. Okay, now the layout of the question paper. Okay, in this prelim examination, we expect a question paper to have about 4 or 5 questions. 4 or 5 questions. That means question one, which will consist of finance, data handling, and probability. In other words, it's a combination of these topics: finance, data handling, and probability. And we do not expect it to be, or we expect it to be around about 30 marks for question one. And now, boys and girls, question one, we expect it to consist of the easiest questions that you can get across the question paper. The easiest questions that you can get across the question paper. We do not expect any learner, okay? We do not expect any learner, or we do not expect an examiner to make it very difficult. This you might have seen from previous question papers, that actually question one consists of the easiest. We expect all learners, or we expect every learner to get all the marks of question one. And then of course, question two will consist of finance. And then question three will consist of data handling only. And then question four will be a combination of finance, data handling, and probability. Remember, at question number 2, you might still get 1 or 2 questions about probability as well. Remember, probability can be integrated, okay, can be combined with any questions. So even in question 2, you might still get probability as well. So you might still get probability, and this one you might also get probability. So probability can be anywhere. So just remember that. But question 2 will be based on the sections or the sections that are under finance topic. And then question 3 will be based on the sections or the subtopics that are under the topic of data handling. And then we've got question 4, which is now we're going to have a combination of finance, data handling, and probability. Okay, so it might happen that the examiner might give an extra question, question 5. Question 5 will also consist of finance, data handling, and probability. The only difference here is in question 4 and question 5, you're going to get different scenarios. Okay, question 4, you're going to get a combination of scenarios of finance, data handling, and probability. And then question 5 is still about finance, data handling, and probability, but now it's going to be a different, it's going to have different scenarios. So it's very, very important that you have an idea. And then we always advise learners that you must please always, when you strategize, start with the easiest questions. Okay, start with the easiest topics. You know yourself, you know which topics you think are the easiest. Okay, but from our experience, we know that data handling, it's actually more easier than finance. Most of you find data handling to be easier. So it means after answering question one of which we expect all the questions to be easy, will be the easiest. Start with question 1 if possible. Actually, we advise you to start with question. Make sure that you answer question 1. Then when you go to question 2 and question 3, okay, you can decide. But if maybe you find question 2 to be a bit challenging, go to question 3, because that is where you will be able to score marks. Then you can come back to question 2, and then you go to question 4, and then also question 5. Okay, so it's very important that you plan better and you know how to approach your question paper. Okay, now with regard to finance, just to refresh your memory, what you have studied throughout the year, what you have studied throughout the year in terms of finance. When we talk about finance topics or finance topic, it's got the following. First thing, terminologies. Now it's very important that you know all the terminologies in under finance. Any terminology that you can think of under finance. I'm talking about interest. What do we mean by interest? What do we mean by interest rate? What do we mean by VAT? What do we mean by rebate? And so on, so on. All the terminologies that you would have done throughout the year, you need to know their definition. The examiner might ask you to define some of them. And then, of course, financial documents. Okay, you should expect a question or questions that are based on a financial document. Financial document, we might be talking about bank statement, we might be talking about a salary advice, we might be talking about electricity bill, we might be talking about a cell phone bill, with all that information that is indicated on the statement. And then there will come questions that will be based on that statement. Okay, and then of course taxation. And then I can see some of you reaction when we get to this one. Boys and girls, taxation, we tend to think that it's one of the challenging sections, but you can still score some marks there. We are not saying if taxation is going to count 10 marks, then it means the chances are you might get 0 out of 10. You might still get 5. Maybe you lose 5. But let us please not take taxation as the most difficult section, because in taxation, under taxation, what are we referring to? You expect concepts like URF. Of course, you must know URF. You must think about 1% by employee, 1% by employer. And then we also have And we also have, of course, income tax, right? We've got income tax. And then, of course, we have VAT. You must know how to calculate VAT. Okay, you must calculate how to calculate the VAT amount, how to calculate an amount including VAT, how to calculate an amount excluding VAT, and so on and so on. So it does not mean for taxation it's a train smash. You can still score some marks there if you thought taxation is challenging. And then, of course, tariff systems. Then tariff systems, I know that some of you also find it very challenging. If it's out of 15 marks, it does not necessarily mean you will get zero. Okay, the examiner might make it easier somewhere where you'll be able to score some marks. But for tariff system, we're talking about water tariff, we're talking about electricity tariff, we're talking about transport tariff, we're talking about bank tariffs. So those are the different types of tariffs that you can get. So make sure that you go and study that so that you can score some marks there, if not all the marks. And then, of course, income, expenditure, the terminologies, expenditure statement, profit, loss, cost price, selling price, break-even analysis. Okay, so this one you also need the definitions. We also need to know about interest, banking, loans, and we also need to know about inflation. We also need to know what an inflation is, and we also need to know what an exchange rate is, or exchange rates are. So apart from the definitions, you must also remember how to calculate this. Okay, then of course, data handling. Now, with regard to data handling, remember the developing questions, okay, how to develop questions, and the method of collecting data. Okay, boys and girls, it might be about one question or two questions, but it's a lot of marks. You just have to make sure that you collect marks. Now, the method of collecting data, you all know that we've got interviews, we've got observation, we've got database, and then we've got questionnaire and so on. So questionnaire, interview, observation, and database, those are the methods of collecting data. And then we also have how to classify. Now, classifying data, we classify data using what? A frequency table. Frequency table. Remember the tallies, okay? How to count using tallies, it's very, very important. Those are the easy concepts where you can score a lot of marks. And then, of course, how to organize data. Okay, so now remember, in this case of classifying data, remember data can be classified into categorical, categorical and numerical, categorical and numerical. So you must know that what do we mean by categorical data, and what do we mean by numerical data? Okay, categorical data is an information that has been given in the form of groups. Okay, it's an information that is given in the form of categories, hence the word categorical. Okay, like for instance, if I want to categorize learners in the schools, I can categorize the learners according to their ethnic groups. Okay, the Zulus, the Sutus, the Tswanas, and so on and so on. So that will be categorical data. Okay, so and then obviously numerical, it's an information that has been presented in the form of numbers. Okay, it's an information that has been presented in the form of numbers. And then, of course, under numerical, we also have a discrete data, and we also have continuous data. Continuous data. Okay, now one common misconception about discrete and continuous. Most of the learners tend to think that whenever a number is, or whenever the data is in the form of whole numbers, then that is a discrete. And whenever an information is in decimal form, or the data is in decimal form, and that means continuous. But that is not always the case. Remember, discrete data is the type of data that we get by counting. Okay, it is the type of data that is given by counting. Okay, Like for instance, the number of tables in your classroom, the number of learners in the school, the number of teachers in the school, and so on. The only way to get that information is through counting. So the information that we get by counting, that will be a discrete. Okay, like in some cases they might give you, let's say, the population of one area. Okay, the population, let's say the population of Soweto, they say the population of Soweto is about 3.3 million. Okay, 3.3 million. That is the population of Soweto. I'm just giving an example. Some of you, when they look at this number, they will think that this is a continuous because it's in decimal form. But that is not true. Because how do we collect the population in Soweto? When you collect the information, we need to count the people. Okay, so 3.3 million, we know that as an ordinary number, it's actually 3,300,000 if we write it as an ordinary number. But if you just look at that number and say it's decimal, then it's continuous, then that will be wrong. Okay, so it's about the nature of data. A discrete data is the type of information that is collected by counting, and continuous is the type of data that is collected by measuring. For instance, if I have to measure the weight or the mass of each and every learner in the classroom, okay, in some cases I might get a decimal, in some cases I might get a whole number. It is possible to get a learner who weighs 60 kilogram, or to get a learner who weighs 61.5 kilogram. Okay, so if it's 61.5 kilogram, or if it's 60 kilogram, because it's a whole number, then you're going to say that is continuous. That is wrong. But in this case, it's about how we get the information. We get the information by measuring. You need to measure. If we get an information by measuring, that is continuous data, but by counting, it's a discrete data. Okay, then summarizing data. Now, summarizing data, I think we all know this. Mean, you must know how to calculate mean. You must know how to determine mean. You must know how to determine or calculate mean. You must know how to determine or calculate median. You must know how to determine mode. You must know how to determine minimum, maximum, and so on and so on. So all those concepts is very, very important to know them. Summarizing data. And then representing data. Now, representing data is all the graphs that you have done. Pie chart, bar graph, and then remember, with bar graphs, we've got different types of bar graphs. We've got a single bar graph, we've got compound bar graph, we've got double bar graph, we've got a horizontal bar graph, and so on and so on. We've got uh, histogram, we've got the other type of, I'm actually thinking, because this one, it's really done by learners. Okay, the scatter plot. The scatter plot. It's also very, very important. So I'm just giving you a hint, and then that is representing data. And then, of course, analyzing data. So with representing data, it simply means representing data, they can ask you to draw the graphs. But we know that in MathsLead, we don't draw a pie chart. We are not expected to draw a pie chart. We are not expected to draw box and whisker, okay? But we can be given a pie chart, and then they ask us questions based on the pie chart, or they can give you a box and whisker and they ask you questions based on box and whisker. So it's very important that from that information, you'll be able to analyze the data. Okay, now, boys and girls, at this stage, you must be in a position to answer any question that will be given to you, because now we have covered the whole syllabus of MathsLead, starting from grade 10, grade 10, 11, and 12. So that means you are now ready, or you should now be ready to answer any question. If your educator gives you a worksheet now, or they give you a question from any previous question paper, you should be in a position to answer that question, because you cannot come up with an excuse. You cannot come up with excuses and say, but this one is not covered. This one we haven't done it. You need to go and you need to go back to your notes and check and revise or refresh your memory. So in these questions, we are going to look at uh, the questions that are taken from previous question papers. Okay, the questions that are taken from the previous question papers, and now you just imagine, what if I was seeing this question for the first time? Would I be able to answer it? Okay, what if this was actually an examination in front of me, and then I had to answer this? I was seeing this question for the first time. Was I going to be able to answer it? So if you would not be able to answer it, it means you are not ready. You still need to go and prepare yourself. Now, this question is taken from one of the previous question papers. It's the table below shows the weather forecast with a maximum and minimum. I'm sure, of course, it's not the first time you see these words or you hear about these words. Maximum and minimum, they should be something that comes into your mind when you see these two words. Like maximum is the highest value, and then minimum is the lowest value in a data set. Okay, for three cities for 29 April 2017. So now this, we've got city A, the maximum is 24 and the minimum is 6. And then B, 32, minimum is 26. And then C, the maximum is 8 and the minimum is -7. And there you've got weather forecast, sun and cloud cover. And then this one, it's sun. Okay, this one is there's a sun and then clouds, and this one there's a sun, and this one is clouds only. And then the chances of rain, chance or percentage chance of rain is 59. Remember, this is actually 59%, and this is 0%, and this is 3%. Okay. Now the questions are as follows: 1.1.1, identify the city with the lowest temperature. Identify the city with the lowest temperature. Okay, now the city with the lowest temperature, it means we must go and check under minimum. Okay, because it means the lowest must come from the minimum. We've got 1, 2, 3 values. Now which one is the lowest, which one is the smallest? So the smallest temperature or the lowest temperature is -7. But in this case, they say identify the city. We need to write the name of the city. So in this case is city C. So this one you can just say C, or you can just say city C. So city C is the one with the lowest temperature. Okay. Think about the negative numbers and the positive numbers. Okay. If you've got a number line, we know that if you've got 0, okay, and then we've got 1, we've got 2, we've got 3, and then on the left hand side we've got -1, -2, and so on. So the more you go to the left hand side, the smaller the numbers get. Okay, the more you go to the right hand side, the bigger the numbers get. Okay, so in this case you will see that if you say -2 is going to be -3, -4, -6, -7, so -7 will be the smallest. Okay, then for 1.1.2, it's calculate the temperature range. Okay, to show that you are ready, you must have an idea. Even if they had to ask you what the range is, you'll be able to answer it. Okay, but in this case, it's not about defining range. But obviously, if you know how to calculate the range, obviously you would know how to define it. Okay, now we all know that the range is the difference between the highest value and the lowest value, or the difference between the maximum and the minimum. Okay, the difference between, if I have to compare the distances, I will say the difference between the longest distance and the shortest distance. But what matters is the difference between the biggest value and the smallest value, or the difference between the highest value and the lowest value. So in this case is calculate the temperature range for CTC. Now if I look at CTC, is the biggest value or the maximum is 8 and the minimum is -7. So on your calculator you will say now range is 8 minus -7. Okay, 8 minus -7. So for this one, if you're going to press this exactly as is using your calculator, now we want us to check this. Okay, so on your calculator, it's 8, then you press the minus sign, you press the minus sign again, then you say 7, then it must give you 15. Okay, so it's 8, then it's minus, we minus the smallest number, the smallest number is -7. I know some of you will say let's put it in brackets and so on and so on, but if you do it straight as is, you still get the same answer. You just don't need to forget that this is -7. So it's 8, then you say minus, then you press the minus again, then you say 7, and this will give you 15 right away, nothing else. So the range is 8 minus -7, and then you get 15. Okay, don't make a mistake and just say 8 minus 7 where you get the answer of 1. So the answer in this case is 15. Okay, then 1.1.3 are the temperatures recorded as example of discrete or continuous data. We have alluded to the difference between the two, discrete and continuous. Okay, we said discrete is an information that is collected by counting. Continuous is an information that is collected by measuring. Now, think about a temperature. Is it possible to count a temperature? We don't count a temperature to get the value of the temperature. Obviously, the temperature must be measured. By using which instrument? I'm sure you also did that one. We're using a thermometer, or you can use a temperature scanner. During COVID and so on, yeah, they were to measure your temperature. They were using a temperature scan. So a temperature scanner or thermometer to measure the temperature. And in a case of where they have to measure the temperature of a person, we can use a temperature scanner. Okay, but for daily temperature, they actually going to use thermometer. Okay, so in this case, they say, are the temperatures recorded an example of discrete or continuous? It's continuous. It's continuous. So the answer in this case is continuous. The examiner might ask you why. Why you say it's continuous? Because this is an information or data that must be collected by measuring. Okay, then 1.1.4 is identify the city that has no chance of rain. Okay, identify the city that has no chance of rain. So there's no chance at all. Impossible. It is impossible to have rain in that city. Okay, so in this case, if you look at the percentage chance of rain, there we've got 59%. It means there's a chance of rain. And then this one we've got 0. This one we've got 3. So 3, it means it's very, 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 the chances are very, very, very low, but there's still a slight chance. It might drizzle a little bit, but on that day we'll say it rained a little bit. So in this case, the chances of not having a rain, it's which they say identify the city. So the city is city B. You can just say letter B, or you write city B. Okay, 1.1.5. A probability scale in weights and as decimal fractions is given below. A probability scale, I'm sure you have also covered the probability scale, is given below. Write down in weights the chance of rain for city A. Write down in weights the chance of rain for city A. Now, city A, it's 59%. Okay, 59%. Some learners, when they say write it in weights, and they just take that value and write it in weights, they say 59% in weights. But that is not what the examiner is looking for. The examiner is looking for the weights like impossible, If it's 0%, it's impossible. Okay, and then if it's from um, above zero, okay, above zero to okay, let me do it like this. You can see that on this probability scale, we've got 0, we've got 0, 0.2, we've got 0, 0.5, I mean 0, 0.4, we've got 0, 0.5, we've got 0, 0.6, we've got 0, 0.8, we also have 1. Okay, the probability scales are indicated in the form of decimals. But we know that in Maths Lit again, you must be able to change a decimal number to a percentage. You must be able to change a decimal number to a percentage. If it's 0, 0.2, how do we change 0, 0.2 to a percentage? You just take 0, 0.2 and then you multiply it by 100%. If you want to change any number to a percentage, you just multiply it by 100. So this is the same as 20%. So this 0, 0.2 is the same as 20%. Okay, 0, 0.4 is the same as, so 0, 0.4 multiplied by 100% is the same as 40%. Okay, and then 0, 0.5. 0, 0.5 is the same as 0, 0.5 multiplied by 100% is the same as, it is the same as 50%. Okay, and then we'll also have 0, 0.6. 0, 0.6 will be 60%. 0, 0.8 will be 80%. And then 1, of course, if it's 1 times 100, we get 100. 1 is the same as 100%. So if it's 0 or 0%, it's impossible. If it's 20%, it's most unlikely. Okay, it's most unlikely. So in other words, from above 0 to if it's more than 0, up between 0 and 20%, we will say this is unlikely. Okay, that is unlikely. And then from 20, okay, so from this, so let me put it like this: from above 0 to 20, okay, that will be most unlikely. Okay, and then from 20 to before 50, or between 20, from 20 up until before 50, that will be unlikely. Okay, then we've got even chance, which is 50%, and then from above 50% up until less than 80, that will be most unlikely. Okay, I mean, that will be likely. From here to there, it's going to be likely. And then from here to there, from 80 to less than 100 or to less than 1 is going to be most likely. So you must be able to interpret this. If we say from this to this amount, it's going to be most unlikely. So let me put it like this: from above 0 to 20, it's going to be most unlikely. Okay, and then from 20 up until less than 50 is going to be unlikely, and then 50, it's even chance, so it's 50-50. And then above 50 up until less than 80 is going to be likely, and then from 80 up to less than 100 or 1 is going to be most likely. But let's see, let us look at our question. So just make sure that you go and study the probability scale, and you know the probability scale in weights. Okay, you know the probability scale in weights. They say write down in weights the chance of rain. So the 59%, obviously it's where, so 59% is going to be between it's here. Okay, so it's here, so that will be likely. Okay, it's here, it's still less than most likely. So 59%, it's falls between here, so that this will be likely. So that is the weight, not 59% in weight. So we need to check that. Okay, now the next question is: the supervisor at Zoom car wash has to report for duty 30 minutes earlier than the normal starting time from Monday to Saturday, but leaves work at the same time as other workers. He receives a monthly salary, works every Sunday, and is paid overtime. Now, remember, boys and girls, reading is part of the given time. So in other words, when you read, you are not actually wasting time, because the time that is allocated, it also includes reading. It's also for reading. Okay, then there you've got an information, right? Now, if you look at the salary slip, you will see that in this case, we've got personal information, you've got the name of the employer, you've got the address, and you've got the name of employee, ID number, and so on and so on. And there you've got any information of the normal hours and so on. So what you can do is, after reading the information, you just look at the picture and then you move on to the next question. You look at at what the question is looking for. Now, in this case, they say explain the term employer. Okay, okay, explain the term employer. Okay, now when it comes to definitions, boys and girls, you are not restricted to write the same definition, all of you. Okay, I'm sure already now you have an idea. Okay, so that idea that you have, just put it in writing. Just a couple of words will be enough. You do have an idea, so just put it in writing. Just write it down. So that answer will be correct. Okay. So the term employer, it's so an employer, we can say it's a person or organization, okay, that hires people to do a job, and offer them a payment, and offer him or her a payment. Okay, I might have made it a little bit longer, but you get an idea, person or an organization. Because in most cases, when we think about an employer, we think about a person, but an employer can also be an organization, can be a company. Okay, you get companies like let's say, for instance, ESCOM. Okay, or for instance, your educator at school level. The educator's employer might be Gauteng Department of Education, or maybe the school itself. Does not necessarily mean an employer must be a person. So in this case, an employer is a person or organization that hires person, or you can say people, to do a job and offer them a payment. Okay, so just to give you an idea. So you can see that in this case, we are not restricted. I'm not saying your answer will be exactly the same, or your answer must be exactly the same as mine, but your answer must be more or less in terms of interpretation. Then we've got state one benefit of contributing to the URF. Now, boys and girls, as you are studying questions from previous questions, of course, URF, it cannot just be URF. You should know what URF stands for. You should know what URF stands for. We all know that URF stands for Unemployment Insurance Fund. Okay? Unemployment Insurance Fund. It's an insurance. Okay. Now, the benefit of contributing to the URF. How is this URF going to help you? Why is it so important that people must contribute to URF, or people should contribute to URF? Because there are some um, jobs or employees who are not compelled to contribute to IF and so on. Like, for instance, people who are employed by the Department of Education, they're not contributing to UIF. Okay. So, state one benefit of contributing to UIF. So, how is it going to help us? So, this one will give a short-term relief a short-term relief in terms of salary. Okay, a short-term relief in terms of salary should one gets ill or become unemployed. Okay, there are cases where people are working and they are contributing to UIF. The reason for that is you'll never know what might happen. Okay, you will never know what might happen. Like if the people who are working for Gauteng Department of Education, they are permanent. Okay, they've got benefits of, for instance, if they are ill or they get injured, they can stay at home and still receive a full salary. But we know that there are certain companies that are actually working on production. Okay, so it means if one employee is absent, that is going to affect their production. If maybe they are working with 5 people, and then with those 5 people, they can be able to manufacture certain items, certain number of items per day. So once they have 4, so production is going to be affected. So it means the person who would not be able to come to work, that person would not be able to get the salary because that person is not working. So if the person was contributing to UIF, the UIF will be able to pay that person for a certain number of months. It might not be a full salary, but maybe they might say half or 80% of what you would have earned. Okay, so the UIF, the benefit is the short-term relief in terms of salary should one get ill or becomes unemployed. So that is one benefit there. Okay, then for number 2.3 is calculate the value of B. So calculate the value of B. If I check in the salary slip, we look at the following. The amount in rent, they say this is B, and we've got 1,184 rand and 40 cents, which is the Sunday hours, and we've got 350. So what is happening here is, if you look at the amount in rent, all this amount must add up to 6,209 rand and 44 cents. Okay, so this value, this one, and this one, when we add them together, they must give us 6,209 rand and 44 cents. So to find the value of B, it means we can subtract. There's the value of B, it's equals to, we'll say 6,209 rand and 44 cents, and then we subtract 6,000. Okay, we subtract, no, actually it's not this one, it must be the total gross salary. Sorry, it must be the total gross salary, which is B equals to the total gross salary is this one. Okay, so they must add up to, so all these 3 values is 1, 2, 3, only these 3, 1, 2, 3 values, the 3 of them must add up to 6,272 rand and 16 cents. So in this case, I'll say 6,272 rand and 16 cents. We subtract 350 rand and 88 cents. Okay, and then we also subtract 1,184 rand and 40 cents. So it's this amount, subtract those. So now let's take let's take our calculators. So if you say 6,272.16, then we subtract 350.88, and then we subtract 1,184.40. Okay, so I'm getting 4,736.88. So it's 4,736 rand and 88 rand. So that is the value of B. That is how we find the value of B. So the value of B must be 4,736 rand and 88 cents. Okay, then number 2.4, calculate the total URF amount. Remember, I indicated before that when you see the word URF, there should be many things that you think of. Okay, what URF stands for. Okay, how do we calculate URF and so on. So calculate the total URF amount that must be paid on behalf of Mr. Nubuga to the Department of Labor. Calculate the total URF amount that must be paid on behalf of M. Nubuga to the Department of Labor. Okay, remember what is happening in this case is an employer is the one that is responsible for paying the total URF to the Department of Labor. So, but we know that 1% must come from the employer and 1% must come from the employee. Okay, so it must be 1% of the gross salary. Okay, it must be 1% of the gross salary as indicated in this case. Okay, so now for this one we need to calculate the 1%. Okay, so it's 1%, so it must be 1% by employer. 1% by employer. So 1% by employer is going to be 1%, which is the same as 1 over 100. Then we multiply by what is our gross? It's 6,272 rand and 16 cents. Okay, so it's 1%. So this 1% will be, if I calculate 1%, please make sure just to be sure that you get it right. 1 over 100 multiplied by 6,272.16. Okay, then we get 62,7216. Okay, this is how much we get, right? Then we know that there must be another 1%, 1% by employee. So an employee will also contribute 1%, which is going to be exactly the same amount. So it's, I don't have to show the calculation again. So it's 62,7216. Now some of you maybe are wondering why am I not rounding off? I'm sure that your teachers have indicated to you that in MathLate we don't actually round off until we get to the final answer. So it's 1% by employer and 1% by employee. So I just need to add the two values. If I add the two values together, so total it's 62.7216 plus another 62.7216. Some might say let's just multiply it by 2. So plus 62.7216. Okay, so it's 125.4432, which is about 125.44, 125 rand and 44 cents. Boys and girls, however way you do it, as long as at the end of the day you get to the same answer. Okay, I know that you are all coming from different schools and obviously you are using different approaches, but what matters in this case is the final answer, which is the same. Okay, I know some of you might say I could have done it this way or I could have done it differently, but what matters is the answer must be the same. So that will be 125 rand and 44 cents. That is the answer for number 2.4. Okay, then the next question is, the government receives income from various sources like tax and loans. This income is then distributed to different sectors. Okay, So as indicated there, so there's an income and expenditure statement. It clearly shows where the government is getting money from, obviously through taxes, through loans, through other income, and through non-tax income. And then this is how they spend the money through different departments. Social development, they spend so much, basic education, health, peace and safety, and so on and so on. So here they indicated the expenditures. Right. But now, if you look at in it, this is very, very important. You must always be careful here because most of you tend to forget this because you don't read it in detail. It simply means if you see 278,4, it does not necessarily mean this is 278,4. Okay, it's actually 278,4, but in billions. Okay, this is actually in billions. Right. The same thing with if you look at this one, it's 1,370, but this is not actually 1,300. I mean 1,370 rand. It's a very small amount of money to say this is the money that is collected by the government through tax. This is 1,370, but this is in billions. So if you look at this, it means if it's 1,370, then you multiply it by billion. If it's one 370. It simply means this is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, then the 9 zeros will represent the the billion. Okay, and then so but what is this number? So obviously this number has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If it has got 12 digits, then what is that? Obviously, it's a trillion. So this is 1,370 billion. Okay, 1,370 billion. Okay, so that is how you're supposed to interpret it. The same thing if you look at 31,5. So if it's 31,5, we take that 31,5. Okay, we take that 31,5, we multiply it by a billion. So it's 1 and 9 zeros. So if you multiply by the 9 zeros, then you get 3, then it's 150. Okay, so it's 31. So you take 3, 1.5, you multiply it by 1 and 9 zeros. So it must be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then I'm getting 3150. Okay, then I've got zeros. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then this must be okay. So it's 31. So this must be 31 trillion. Okay, it's actually 31 billion 500 million. 31 billion 500 million. So this is how what you get. Okay. Then let us look at the next question. They say write the amount received from loans as a number in millions. Okay, write the amount received from loans as a number in millions. So the loans we've got 242.7. Okay, and then they say we must write it in millions, but before we write it in millions, we must first write it in billions. So for this to be billions, we take this, we multiply by 1. Okay, so it's 247, 242,7. So if I do this, so I'm going to get 242 billion. Okay. Okay, so in this case, I've got 242 billion 700 million. 242 billion 700 million. Okay, so but they say this must be written in millions only. So for me to write this in millions, it means I must divide by 1 million. So if I must, it must divide it by a million. If I divide it by a million, the zeros will cancel out. Okay, so these zeros will cancel out. Okay, so cancel the 3 zeros here. I must cancel this 0 and this 0, this 0 and this 0, and then this 0 and that 0. So I'm left with 2, 4, 2, 700, and then I just write the word million. Okay, so boys and girls, it means in this case you must be able to work with these big numbers. You must know how to convert an ordinary number to to convert a decimal number, to write this number with the word billion, or to remove the word billion to an ordinary number. So it's very, very important that you must also go and look at that. So if we write it with the word million, it means it's 242,700 million. Okay, then the next question is calculate the missing value A. Calculate the missing value A. So the missing value A in this case, it's here. Okay, so for the value of A, it's the total. Now we just need to add. So the value of A will be 1370 plus 242.7 plus 18,3 and plus 31.5. Okay, so we just need to check. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 values. 1, 2, 3, 4 values. So you just need to use your calculator. So it's 1370 plus 242.7 plus 180.3 plus 31.5. Okay, I hope this is correct. 1370, 242.7, and then 18.3. Okay, 18.3. I'm just checking if I've punched in the correct values, 31.5, and then this looked correct. Then I get 1824.5. So that would be the value of A. 1824.5. This will be the value of A. Right? Calculate the missing value B. Show all calculations. Let's check. The missing value B is this one. So we've got the amount for all different departments, but we don't have the amount for the other department, okay, or other departments. So in this case, but we know the total. You can see that this looks similar to the one of the previous questions that we have already done. Again, there might be different approaches. In this case, we might approach it differently, but what matters is at the end of the day, the answer will be the same. So what we can do, we just take the total, which is 1823.72, and then I subtract. Some would add up all the values, and then after that they just add the total. They just subtract the total. But some might still indicate and say 1823.72 minus 278.4 minus 262.4 minus 222.6 minus 211.0 minus 209.2 minus 208.5 minus 202.2, and then minus 112.7. Okay, how many values are there? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That must be subtracted. So if I take this one, I say, then I subtract 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I just take the calculator. I say 1823.72 minus 278.4 minus 262.4 minus 222.6 minus 211.0 minus 209.2 minus 208.5 minus 202.2 and then minus 112.7. Okay, boys and girls, I hope you are also doing the same thing. So what I'm getting here is 116.72. I hope I have punched in all the correct values. 116.72, that will be the value of B. Okay, 116.72. So that will be the answer for number 3.3. Okay, but like I said, some of you might start by adding all these values. Then after adding, you just take the total, you subtract the sum there, or what you would have gotten as the answer of addition. Okay, the next one is number 3.4, is determine the amount allocated for community development as a percentage of the total expenditure. Determine the amount allocated for community development. Now we need to check community development. We just have to make sure that we take the correct amount. This is the community development, which is 208.5 as a percentage of the total expenditure. Total expenditure is 1823.72. It's just like if I say determine the percentage of boys in the classroom, then you take the number of boys, you divide it by the total number of learners. Okay, so this one we take 208.5 divided by 1823.72 multiplied by 100. Okay, so 208.5, if you do it on 208.5 divided by 1823.72, then times 100, then I get 11.4. So this one is 11.4. I'm actually getting 11.43266 and so on. In the end, it's a percentage. If you decide to round it off, whole number, it's 11%. 1 decimal, comma 4, 2 decimal, comma 43. Just make sure that when you round off correctly. Okay, then question 4, it's Susan started a business 1 month later, and because of the price increase of products, it then cost her 950 to make 1 cup of Milo. She calculated that the daily fixed cost was 90 rand, and she would be able to sell 100 cups of Milo per day. She will sell the Milo at 12 rand 50 per cup, and then income from the sale of cups of Milo as indicated. Okay, if she had to sell 0, she would not get any income. Remember, you can only get an income from selling. 20, 250, 30, 375, 40, it's P, and then 8 is 1,000, 100 is 1,250. Let us look at the questions. Okay, then for the questions, it's determine the value of P in the above table. There's the value of P. P represents the income. So it means P is equals to, what is that? We can only get the income from the selling price. Then we say 12 rand 50, 12.50 multiplied by 40. Okay, so 12.50 multiplied by 40. So the answer is 500. Okay, it's 500. I know some of you could have done this by means of inspection, but I think the calculations are also very, very important. Then the next one is Write down an equation that can be used to calculate an income. Write down the equation that can be used to calculate an income. Now, boys and girls, we have already calculated an income in the previous question, and then you can see how we calculated it. So for this one, in order to calculate an income, we take the selling price. So income is equals to the selling price multiplied by number of items. Okay, this is the general formula. The selling price multiplied by the number of items. But in this case, the selling price is 12 rand 50. So we say 12,50, and we multiply by number of what is that? Number of cups of Milos, or number of cups of Milo. Sorry, it must be number of cups of Milo. Some of you might say 12,50 multiplied by n, but now if you say multiply by n, you still have to explain what n represents. Okay, so it's very important, because it's not always where n okay, n is just the general. Okay, but if you just put n, then you must explain what n represents. But if you try 12,5 multiplied by the number of cups of Milos, it means you have already indicated what n represents. Okay, that is number 4.2. Okay, number 4.3, identify the independent variable in the table above. Now, boys and girls, independent and dependent. Independent and dependent. Okay, in this case, if you're a business person and then you've got the number of cups, okay, if you've got the number of cups and you are selling them, right? So what would happen in this case? For you to get an income, you must sell the number of cups of Milo. So an income depends on the number of cups that you will sell. And income depends, because without selling the number of cups, you will not get an income. So in this case, identify the independent. The number of cups will always be there, because the number of cups does not depend on the income. It's only the income that depends on the number of cups. So in this case, an independent is the number of cups of Milo. Number of cups of Milo. Number of cups of Milo, then you are done. Right, then for this one, it's calculate the value of Q. So now the table is different. The table is now slightly different. The number of cups of Milo. So we've got cost price in rent, the cost price. So if you look at the formula that is given, Susan uses the following formula to determine the cost price of the cups of Milo. The cost is 90 rand plus 950 multiplied by n, where n is the number of cups of Milo. Calculate the value of Q. Now, if you look at how all these cost prices are calculated or were calculated, like for instance, to get 90, how did they get 90? If you take the formula, you say 90 rand plus 9,50 multiplied by 0, which is the number, it's going to give you 90. If you say 90 plus 950 multiplied by 20, if I take this and then I say times 20, it's going to give me 90 plus 9,50 multiplied by 20. Then I'm getting 280. How do they get 375? So the 375 is 90 plus 9,50 multiplied by 30. The same thing with 850 and 1040. But now, how do we get the value of Q? How do we reverse the process? If 30 is given, we know how to calculate it. So for this one, we've got the cost. It's equals to 90 plus 9,50 multiplied by n. Okay. 90 plus 9,50 multiplied by n. But in this case, I don't know what the value of n is, but that is what I'm looking for. I know the cost. The cost is 612,50 equals to 90 plus 9,50 times n. So I have to find the value of n. Okay, now to find the value of n, it means now I must take 90 to the other side. If I take 90 to the other side, I'm going to get 612.5 minus 90. Then I get 522. So I get 522.5. If I take 90 to the other side, it becomes minus. Then equals to, this is 9,50 times n. If I want to remove 9,5, I divide both sides by 9,50. I divide the other side by 9,50. Okay, then I say 522.5 minus 9,50. Then I get 530. No, so let me check. It must be 612.5 minus 90. I get 522.5. Okay, and then I take 522.5, I divide it by 9.5. So sorry, it must be 55. So it must be 55. The value of n is 55. Okay, so if I take 522.5, I divide it by 9,5, I get 55. So that is how we find the value of n. But some of you might still do it by means of inspection. So by means of inspection, it's you look at the 612 rand and 50. Okay, you say, right, but before I divide this by 9,5, I must subtract the fixed cost. I must subtract 90. The 90 rand has got nothing to do with the number of cups. It has got nothing to do with the number of cups. It's just a fixed cost. So you say 612,5. So 612,5, 0. We subtract 90, and then we say all divided by 9,5. Okay, we say all divided by 9,5, and this will give you the correct answer. So it will still give you 55. Okay, so it doesn't matter how you do it, but what matters is as long as at the end of the day you get to the correct answer. Okay, then for number 4.5 is explain the meaning of the word break-even point. Now we know that for break-even point, it's where the income and the cost price are the same. Okay, it's in a case where you sell the number of cups, and then now you have reached a situation where you have recovered your cost. So in other words, the cost and the income are the same. But in this case is explain the meaning of the word break even in the context of the question. So this one, we can simply say the number of, or the cost, the income of number of cups of Milo is the same as total cost price. Total cost price, or total cost price of the number of cups of Milo. Okay, so in this case, income of number of cups of Milo is the same as, or it's equals to, the total cost price of the number of cups of the total number, the cost price of the number. Okay, same as the total cost price of the number of cups of Milo. Okay, so this must be total number of cups of Milo. So, or however way you can do it, or you can say that is where an income is the same as the the total income is the same as the total cost for the number of cups of Milo. Okay, then they say determine the number of cups of Milo at the break-even point. Okay, so in this case, the two tables are given. Okay, so you just need to check where the income and the cost price are the same, or the total cost price are the same. So if you look at this one, it's if the number of cups is 30, the income is 375. And if the number of cups of Milo is 30, the cost price is 375. So in this case, when the number of cups of Milo is 30 and the number of cups of Milo is 30, then the income and the cost price are the same. So in this case, the number is just 30. Okay, so that is the answer for 4.6. Right. So the next question is about income tax. Dean, a 25-year-old male, earns a taxable income. So a taxable income, this must be earns an annual taxable income, annual taxable income. Now, I know that most of you or some of you get confused because in your classroom, in most cases, you are working with those type of questions where you have to subtract pension. Okay, you have to you have to subtract pension, or maybe you have to subtract donation and so on. But one of the reasons why you have to subtract pension and so on is because you are looking for a taxable income. You are looking for an amount that must be used to calculate tax, I know, of which we call it taxable income. But in a case where the examiner says this is a taxable income, then you don't have to worry about pension. You don't have to worry about all those things. As long as they are not mentioned, it means you are not going to subtract them. Okay, you only subtract them if they are mentioned. Okay, and then they are telling you that this is an annual income. They are not saying it's an annual taxable income. Annual taxable income, it simply means that is the amount that must be used to calculate tax. Right. They say he started his job, or he started his first job on the 1st of March 2019. 5.1, name the government institution responsible for collecting tax return forms. Boys and girls, you might have heard this a lot of time. I don't think there's any of you who doesn't know which institution is responsible for collecting tax on behalf of the government. Okay, so we all know that that is SARS, or South African Revenue Services. Okay, South African Revenue Service. Okay, then the next one is write down the tax bracket that will be used to calculate Dean's tax payable. Write down the tax bracket. Now you should know how to do. You see now, boys and girls, that is why I said with regard to income tax, we are always stressed about it because we think it's challenging. But you can see that in this case, some of the questions are very, very easy. So it means it is possible that even in your paper tomorrow, you will be able to score some marks on the questions that are based on income tax. Like this one, where they just say, write down the tax bracket that will be used to calculate Dean's taxable or Dean's tax payable. Then we've got this. We must use this amount to calculate tax. And remember, it's an annual. There's an indicate. There was just a typing error there. Annual taxable income. Now for the annual, what are we going to do? We look at this amount. Under which tax bracket does this amount fall? Is it from 0 to 195? No. Is it from 195.85 on to 305.850? Let's check. 305. So the highest amount in this case is 305.850. 305.174.44. So it means it's going to be tax bracket number 2. Okay, you can just write 2, or you can write tax bracket number 2. Okay, right. Then the next question is calculate the monthly tax payable by Dean before any rebates are deducted. calculate the monthly tax payable by Dean before any rebates are deducted. Now, boys and girls, obviously, in order to determine the monthly tax, we must first calculate the annual tax. Okay, in most cases, there's no way that you can get to the monthly tax before you calculate the annual tax. So we need to do this one quickly since time is not on our side. Let's see. I'm sure you know how to do the substitution. So this one will say annual tax. Annual tax will be, we're going to use tax bracket number 2. Now tax bracket number 2 says is 35. So it must be 35,253 plus 26% of, okay, then now we say in brackets, okay, in brackets we say taxable income above. So taxable income above 19580, so we take that 305,174.44 and then we subtract the amount above, okay, so which is 195,850. Okay, so we get, then we simplify 35,253 plus 26% of, then we simplify the brackets, 305,174.44 minus 195,850, and then I get 109,324,44. Okay, so this, I have simplified the brackets. Okay, I have simplified the brackets. I know that some of you are flying very high, so you might maybe straight from there you go straight to the simplification, but for some of us who are struggling, we have to do it step by step. Okay, and then we still say 35,253. Sorry about the space. Then this one, and I'm now going to calculate 26% of this. I'm now going to calculate 26%. I know some of you are changing the percentage to decimal and so on and so on, but never mind that. What matters in this case is we must get to the same answer. We are not saying your method is wrong. Okay, there are many ways to get to a certain destination. Okay, whether you're going to take a shortcut or you're going to take a long cut, what matters is at the end of the day, or what matters is at the end of the day, as long as you reach your destination safely. So in this case, if I calculate 26% of that amount, I say times 26 divided by 100, then I get 28,354,544. I get 4 decimal places there, but I don't round it off because it's not the final answer. Okay, and then from there, I'm sorry about the space, I'm going to squeeze it in there. So I'm saying this one, if I add everything together, I get plus 35,253. Then I get 63677.3544. Now remember, this is an annual tax before any rebates. I don't worry about the rebates now. So from that annual tax, I get 63,67.3544. Then now I take that amount because the question was the monthly tax. So I divide it by 12. So if I divide it by 12, in the end, the answer is 5,305 rand. I'm sorry, 306 rand and 4462. Then now, if it was the final answer, or if I make it the final answer, then I can now round it off 306,44. Then I round it off to 2 decimal places. So this will be the answer for the answer. No rebates are indicated there, so I don't have to worry about the rebates. Okay, then the next information is identify the tax rebate that DIN qualifies for in 2019-2020. Okay, this is just a later on question. It has got nothing to do with the it has got nothing to do with the previous questions. So I'm just going to wrap up with this one since time is not on our side. So they say identify the tax bracket. So this person is, let's check the age again, 25-year-old male. So 25-year-old qualifies for the tax rebate, qualifies for only primary rebate. Okay, because Dean is 25-year-old male, so 25, it's below the age of 65. So below the age of 65, and this must be for 2019-2020. So it's only 14,067. 14,057. So it's going to be our answer. 14,067. Okay, now boys and girls, I actually still had few questions to do, especially with regard to data handling. But I know that with regard to data handling, you don't actually have a lot of challenges, because I remember I said that is one topic that you can actually score a lot of marks. Unfortunately, time is limited. Time is not on our side, but I'm sure we have managed to refresh your memory, because we know that some of you might have forgotten this, especially the work that you did in term 1 and term 2. As we saw in June examination, most of you performed much better in paper 2 because you had already done those. You had done those topics recently or just before the final examination. So it means you must please make sure that you go and study everything that you did in term 1 and also in term 2. I know that what you have done recently, now in term 3, you might not have, maybe you didn't forget, you haven't forgotten it, so because you did it recently. But please just make sure that you go and prepare yourself for you to score as much marks as possible. Thank you very much for watching the lesson, and then hope to see you on Monday in preparation for the Tuesday's question paper, that is paper 2. Okay, thank you very much. Goodbye.